Hello, I'm Gavin Hoey and welcome to another Photoshop tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to create this piece of wall art. So what you're looking at here is a close-up of a leaf. It's been copied 4 times and each copy has been rotated slightly and given a different colour. We then added in these black borders to really make it stand out. So that's where we're going to end up, hopefully. Let's have a look at the beginning picture. Here we are. It's just a close-up picture of a leaf, just an ordinary leaf, nothing special. But what I want to do is to crop this so it's a perfect square. Now to do that, I'm going to use the crop tool. Now, what is square? Well, that looks quite square, but maybe that's a perfect square. Maybe that is, possibly not. It can be tricky. So here's a trick. Hold shift as you drag out the crop. And as long as you're holding the shift tool, you will only ever get a perfect square. Maybe a bit big, that one. Let's just make it smaller. There we go. When you're happy, double click inside and you'll crop your image down. Now we're going to need the layers palette, so if you can't see the layers, go up to window and choose layers. And I need, well, another couple of copies, in fact 4 more copies of this leaf. So let's go down and drag it to the new layer icon and let go. So we get 2, 3, 4, oh, missed, 4, and finally 5. So I now have 5 identical layers. Now you may think that's a little bit strange. Why would you want 5 layers when there's only 4 leaves in the final picture? Well, it'll become clear at the end of the tutorial. Okay, so we now need a bit of working area as well because we've got 1 leaf, but we need to give this canvas more room to add in the other leaves around it. So come up to Image and Canvas Size, and then we want to make this bigger. We want to anchor it in the top left corner, so any new canvas we make expands to the right and below. And the size, now I want to double the dimensions, so 3.267 doubled. Anyone quickly? No, I can't do that either. That's actually quite hard for my head, but I do know if I change the units to percent, I can do double 100. That's 200. See, I can do that one. So 200% in both width and height should give you a canvas area that is twice the size in all directions. And that's good because we've now got room to put in our other leaves. Okay, so we'll get the move tool. We'll get the next layer down. Let's grab this one and we'll move it across. Now, if you hold shift, it should click in quite nicely. There we go. And then the one underneath that, which will go down there somewhere. And finally the one at the bottom. Here we go. There we are. So now we have an image with 4 leaves, but it looks a bit samey. They're all facing in the same direction. So I'm going to give 3 of these a twist. Okay, let's start with this leaf here. And we'll come up to Edit, Transform, and then rotate it 90 degrees clockwise. So that just turns it on its side. Okay, let's move down to the next layer, which is this one. And we'll do the same thing, Edit, Transform, but this time I'll rotate it at 180 degrees. So it turns it all the way over. And then the last one of the set, and we'll go back to Edit, Transform, and 90 degrees counterclockwise. So it puts the edge of the leaf on the left-hand side. So now each of our leaves is facing in a slightly different direction. That just breaks up the composition a bit and actually creates quite a nice sort of circular pattern in the middle as it goes. It's a bit of luck. Okay, let's start colouring these leaves in because it's all rather green at the moment. So we'll click back onto our top layer, and for the colour, I'm going to go up to Image, Adjustments, and choose Hue Saturation. Now down in the bottom right corner, you'll find a small box that says Colorize. Click that and your leaf will change colour. Now the colour is controlled by the hue slider, so wherever you put the hue slider will change the colour of your leaf. I'm actually going to leave it where it started on 0 because I quite like that kind of reddy colour. Okay, let's do this with the next leaf along. Should be this one. And we'll go back to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and click Colorize again. Now of course that goes the same colour, but I've already got it all the same colour, so these better be different. So for this one, I'm going to make it a sort of blue colour. So blue you'll find by moving the hue slider towards the centre slightly, or thereabouts. You may need to bump up the saturation a wee bit as well, just to get it exactly the sort of colour you want. I don't want it too vibrant, but I do want a kind of blue colour in there. Okay, we'll move along to the next one, which is this one, bottom right corner. Image, adjustments, hue saturation again, colorize it. This time I want to try and find a yellow color. Now actually yellow is quite tricky and you do need to bump up the color in the saturation. I think we're going to get a more gold than yellow, but I don't mind that. That looks pretty good. And finally the last one, the bottom left corner, which I'm actually going to make green. Yeah, I know it's already green, but it's not just green. It's sort of greens and yellows and bits and pieces. And when you colorize it, it's like a black and white image, but with an even tone all the way across it. So again, we'll need to bring up the saturation a little bit. Not too much, we don't want it oversaturated. Okay, that's pretty good. So we now have our 4 leaves rotated and coloured. So the last thing we've got to do now is to put in those borders, the black border around the edge of each of the leaves. Right, let's start back at the top again with the one in the top left corner. And to put that border in, I'm going to use stroke. And I'm going to use a layer style stroke as well, which is at the bottom of your layers palette. If you're using CS3, you'll find the FX. If you're using an older version, it just says F, but it works in exactly the same way. Click it, and at the bottom you'll find stroke. Now, stroke layer style is one of the things that Adobe give us for a laugh, I think, because when you try and use it, the first thing you notice is that your border, the default color, is bright red. That's attractive, isn't it? So let's change it away from red and go for black instead, which is the color we actually want. The next thing you see is the size slider. If you make it bigger, it does give you a border, but only on 2 sides. That's because, by default, the position is set to outside. That's no good to me. I want it inside, so we change the position to inside, and you actually get a border. There you go. And by changing the size, you can change how wide your border appears. And I think about 35 pixels is pretty good for that one. We'll just click OK. And there it is on the layers palette. You can see it, the small FX icon. And I now need to do the same thing to the other 3 leaves. But I hate doing anything more than once repetitive. And exactly the same every time is really annoying. So here's a neat little trick. If you hold the Alt button on a PC or the Option button on a Mac and drag that FX logo or the F logo down onto the next layer, it copies it. And down onto the next one, it copies it again. And there we go. We've now done it on all 4 leaves. That's looking pretty good. I'm now getting toward the end, I think, here. The last thing I want to do is put a fatter border around the edge, because you can see it's now fatter in the middle with our black border than it is around the edges. Now, this is where the extra layer comes in. Remember right at the beginning where we made 5 copies of our leaf instead of 4? Well, the one at the bottom, very, very bottom one, is a background layer with a padlock on it. That means that you can't have any transparent pixels. It will only have the color that you add in as your background color, which is hidden on my screen, isn't it? You can't see it. There it is, black. So I've got black as my background color. And if I go up to image and canvas size, I'm going to increase my canvas size by about 1 inch all the way around. Now you can either add 1 inch in here, make it 7.533, or tick the relative button and just add 1 inch in the height and the width, and that'll do it for you. Okay, so there you go. There is our thicker border around our nice looking piece of wall art. Now, why do I call it wall art? Well, because that's the kind of picture that when you finish with it, you want to print it out really, really big and stick it up on your wall behind your sofa, and it'll look fantastic. So here we go. There's a picture of my sofa. Let's put that in, and there you are. That gives you an idea of how your wall art is going to look. Okay, go out there, photograph some leaves or anything else with a bit of texture that you can find, print it off super big, and you'll have some fantastic personalized wall art.